this year in particular, where there's been so poor weather-wise, but it's been fantastic for the garden. We've had a mixture of sunshine and showers. We've not had that sustained period of drought. So everything is put on new growth. And I've seen it in some of the areas that I work in, where clients have been forced into making that purchase. They've been forced into making a distressed purchase to tend to edges. It used to be a job that people would normally delegate, but I think with the access to tools now and the fact that there's no longer a petrol engine at the base of these, it just makes it slightly more accessible to your consumers and much easier for them to get to grips with, as opposed to having to wait for a tradesman to come in. Now we'll start again on the 24 volt range. I think this is a lovely bit of kit. And it's obviously something you can never have as a petrol tool. So I'll find the petrol purist now, but this, I kind of, as a personal favourite of mine, I've got a lot of box hedging in my garden, a lot of ornamental hedging. So I've got some topiary. Sculpting something like that is arduous work when you're using either kind of wrist-based tools or personally powered tools. Having something like this allows you to sculpt and shape, especially useful if I'm shearing my balls, and get those neat and tidy and make sure my box balls are looking as fantastic as possible. Have a feel of that with that 24 volt 2 amp hour battery. Just pass that round. Remember, it's a cutting tool, so if you do activate it, just be mindful of that. So it's really well balanced, lightweight. It's just a nice point of difference and allows you to, as a gardener or as a domestic gardener, as opposed to a professional gardener, it gives you scope to feel comfortable doing a task, and it makes what is an otherwise quite a labour heavy task much more easier. It also comes with a shear head as well, so those heads can be changed quickly. And that 24 volt battery, that same battery on there, will also give you access to a 24 volt hedge trimmer. That's a 50 centimetre hedge trimmer. They've got the red bar down here for visibility, but also for safety as well. So it's making the whole process safer. There's a few nice little bits added to it, so you can twist the handle grip. So if you're working up over the top, or if you're coming up down the side, you can get your ergonomics as comfortable as possible. So when you're using the machine, you're holding it in a position that you feel comfortable with. But again, lightweight, really well balanced, and easy to get to use with. I mean, that is not an intimidating prospect, whether you've used a hedge trimmer or not. And that feels like a tool that you can actually get to grips with, even if you're got the novice of gardening. And let's face it, when it comes to hedge trimmers, at entry price points, you tend to only get corded tools on offer. And for me, I think it's a recipe for disaster. You've got a cutting tool at one end and an electrical cable at the end, so the other end. So it is and I've seen it happen numerous of times. And I've gone to clients' houses where they've got halfway through the hedge and they've stopped because they've cut through the cable. It's hilarious if you're watching it happen, not so good if you're actually piloting the tool. But again, make sure you just obviously be mindful of the fact that it's a active tool. So that's the 24 volt tools in the smaller sets. But that 24 volt battery will also power a pole hedge trimmer, a pole chainsaw, so you can keep your feet on terra firma and tackle higher foliage. And again, this time of year, when everything is exploding in new growth, customers looking to be able to maintain their gardens, but not wanting to endanger themselves. I've seen so many people go up rickety ladders, they're stacking up milk crates and things like that. Pole hedge trimmers, pole chainsaws, or interchangeable heads become an enticing prospect because they can then maintain areas of their garden that they wouldn't normally necessarily be able to get access to. There are 40 volt options as well, but we'll kind of breeze over those because there is the 24 volt, the 48 volt power range. The 40 volt kind of sits in the middle, but again, you'll also identify the same kind of features on the 40 volt range with the twisting handle, the comfort and convenience, and that striking red bar, which I think is a nice touch. A lot of other manufacturers don't do that. It allows you to keep an eye on where your blade is, makes you aware of where you're cutting. So from an aesthetic standpoint, you're going to get a better finish, but also you're mindful of exactly where the moving parts are at all times. Now, I'm not going to do too much here. I'm going to breeze over in a second, but I just do want to show you the pole hedge trimmers, especially when it comes to the 60 volt. Again, I mentioned kind of semi-trade performance on this. The 60 volt really does offer that. Again, with what we got here, 4 amp hour, under load I could easily get consecutive cutting time of around 45 minutes on that plus, easily. We've got long, strong, but lightweight shaft, plenty of reach. We've got a 40 centimetre cutting blade again with that striking red on the top. We've got a much more compact motor head at the top here. The articulation at the top here is really smooth as well. But in terms of performance and runtime, which is what I would be after if I'm tending to a larger garden like this, that 60 volt will just keep going and going and going under load. 2 amp, 4 amp and 6 amp hour battery options, charge up using the fast charger in an hour. Greenworks have also come up with a new tandem charger as well, so you can charge 2 60 volt batteries simultaneously. So if you have invested in the range and you're going to invest in more batteries, you're not having to wait then for the battery to charge up, because previously there was only a single charger port available. So that whole charging process is sped up as well. User comfort still retained, shoulder straps as you'd expect, adjustable handle position, safety trigger as well, so no dud activations. But in terms of performance and usage, I have this exact tool at home, and it's an absolute doddle to use. And the virtue of battery powered tools, and this is where hopefully I might win over some of my fossil fuel friends. When the tool is not in use, I don't have that ding, 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 that 2-stroke tinny rattle that you often get when you're idling. Whether it's your chainsaw, whether it's a steel saw, whether it's your hedge trimmer, when that tool's not in operation, you still get that din. You're still getting that movement. You're still getting that heat, that weight. You're still using fuel. As soon as I take my finger off that trigger, I'm not using the battery anymore, and I'm not making any more noise. And you'll also notice as well during activation, you've got to admit, where are my fossil fuel friends? How quiet is that even during operation? Makes it safe for me to use. I can hear you guys, you can hear me hopefully. Also means I'm not going to upset the neighbours. So as a kind of semi-trade performance or entry-level trade performance, I think genuinely, I think it's well up there, especially with some of the other brands that you may stock already. I won't name any, but I know some of them are an absolute steal. But yeah, 60 volt, 2, 4 and 6 amp batteries, all charge up in an hour. Brushless technology as well, which is what consumers want to see. I don't want brush tools anymore. It just means I'm getting more efficiency from the tool and the performance of the battery as well. Longevity, again, tested this. I've thrown it all across the garden. I've thrown it off of a barn roof. I've thrown it onto tarmac, onto stone ground. I've tried to break them. They get scuffed and battered and beaten. Thrown it in the back of the van. I've thrown it out the back of the van whilst it's being moved, about 50 miles an hour down the country lane. Should have checked that there wasn't a car behind me, but you know, these things happen. But it's withstood use and abuse. Battery might pop out, but there's no damage to it whatsoever. I'm still using that same tool at home, albeit a few scuffs and buffs. If you want to have a hold of that, now admittedly, it's got a bit of weight to it, but it's a reassuring amount of weight and no heavier than it would be if it had a 2-stroke engine at the end of it. Right, I will just go on to the brush cutters and line trimmers. You'll see a couple here. The 24 volt, which has come on quite a bit from its original incarnation. There's just a few embellishments on it, which again, if you're going in to buy a distressed purchase, middle of summer, and you want a cordless lightweight, I mean this is really lightweight, line trimmer. It's got everything you want. Self-feeding spool, preloaded spool. We've got a tree guard here, retractable tree guard and plant guard. Nice big safety housing here to keep you away from the business end of the tool. They'll also come up with a pre-installed cut-off to make sure that your wire is always at the optimum length. We've got our edging wheel, so we can use it for both surfacing and edging, so you can run that along the peripheries, so you can cut down into your beds and borders, as well as the surface material. It's easy to use, it's lightweight and simple operation, but it's got, again, loads of power. Filmed a video of this on the runtime just to see how long it would run for with a 24 volt, 4 amp hour battery. Thought it'd be a really good idea to film the whole battery being used from flat to full. It was a dreadful idea because it went on for hours. It went on for an hour and a half and the fun got boring. I ended up wrapping the video up by the end of it because that 4 amp just couldn't exhaust it. Under load, no word of lie, I'd done 90 minutes of line trimming and it still wouldn't give out. So in terms of durability, practicality, usability and effectiveness, really good for your entry level, or if you're just your generic consumer who wants a quick pickup tool all around that 24-volt battery. I'll chuck, if there's a 24, we've got 24. Chuck that in and you can have a feel of the weight of this. I think it's really beautifully balanced. If anyone wants to have a go at any of the tools, let me know and I'll get you chapped up and ready to roll. Because I can see you all eyeballing the chainsaws. I mean, again, like I said to you, all that new growth this time of year, being able to have the confidence. Now I'm going to use this fairly candidly, but even that woodier material, cutting through things like this is holly oak. Let me just see if I can get that thicker bit here. The virtue of that 30mm cutting gate means that you can cut through thicker material, so you can really attack overgrowing, thicker hedging. I use this on a hawthorn at home and it sails through it. I don't know if you just saw that bit, it's just come off. Where's that larger, thicker bit there? So that's holly oak, and that's thick, woody material. It's thicker than my thumb almost. And it's cutting through that, and it's not skipping a beat. The virtue of having that larger steel cutting blade, and also that reach as well. Now I'm obviously being very boisterous, but you can still sculpt with this as well. You can still sculpt things like your Thoya hedging, your Lolandi hedging. You can tailor the tips and the tops to that articulation. So there's plenty of scope for a semi-trade user to be able to tend to larger gardens or their own gardens using a tool like this.